Memo. Welcome to tonight's After Six. I'm really, really excited about tonight. If you've never been to any After Six, welcome. We know that you could be anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us. You could be probably watching Scandal or something. I don't know what comes on Thursdays, but we're glad you're here. You probably are here because you want to learn more about Natashia Deón, the award-winning author of Grace, which is her debut novel. I'm not going to say too much because I want to hear her words, but again, please make this interactive. We're going to do about a 40-minute Q&A. I have some great questions for her, and then we'll just vibe and have a conversation. For all of you out there that are listening in, we welcome you too. Some of you have sent your questions ahead of time, so we'll make sure that we try to get to everything. And for those who are watching live, text us, chat us, engage with us, and we'll do some Q&A at the end, so we don't want you to leave. We're so excited to have you, Natashia. Welcome to the Memo.
Thank you so much for having me, Minda. It's so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into it. Why don't you tell our community of awesome women of color about yourself and what you were doing before you started writing your novel, which is amazing, and I can't wait to jump into it.
Thank you. So I am a practicing attorney still. I'm a mom of two, a wife. I was working in healthcare when this idea of this book came to me. I've taught law school, creative writing, and I enjoy doing all of that. So it's hard. It was always hard for me to say I am a writer. So it took a long time to come to that. Maybe even after the book came out, was I like, okay, now I am. All right. The idea of Grace came to me when my son was really sick. Every time I tell this story, I feel off, because I don't know how to explain it in a way that seems normal or rash, but writing happens that way. It just comes to us. My son was sick, and I was walking down the hallway with him, and I had this vision or daydream or whatever you want to call it. And even though it was daytime, it was early in the morning, all of a sudden it was nighttime. I was standing in what looked like the woods. I saw the full moon there, and I remember thinking at that moment, I'm still asleep. I never got up. I'm dreaming still. I never got up and picked up my son, so I'm still in bed. And then I saw a girl who I knew was a slave, and she was in a yellow dress, and it had blood on it, and she was pregnant, and she ran by me, and I could hear just what she was thinking, her fear, and that scene, and then it ended, and that scene became the opening of Grace. So I wrote down what I saw. I told my husband, hold our son. I'm going to write this down. But it didn't happen right away. I put it in a drawer for 6 months, and then other things happened, and then it just all came together for me. And I knew I had to write it, because how often are we, at least I felt like I was given this thing, and I needed to carry it to whatever imaginary finish line it was supposed to get to, and then I thought I could walk away and I'd be done and never see anything again. Yeah, but the rest is sort of it's happening right now and amazing me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know sometimes as women of color, we don't brag enough about ourselves, so I'm not going to let you get away without bragging on on how much accolades your debut novel received. So why don't you tell our community some of those? Get braggadocious on us for us.
Oh, that's hard. That's hard.
I'll help you. NAACP Image Award nominee. We'll start there.
Okay. I've gotten the American Library Association, the Black Caucus gave me the Best Debut Novel Award. The New York Times named it a Best Book of 2016 when it came out. Kirkus Review, Best Book, Entropy. So it got a lot of Best Book awards and just a lot of attention. And it floored me, because it was the first time where I felt like I had only this dream and this faith and this hope, and I trusted it, wholly, and I invested in it and invested in myself. I learned the craft of writing So it wasn't just me thinking, oh, I'm a writer because I write in my journal or I write this email. I actually invested in myself. So like you would any business, if you want to be a nurse, you go to nursing school. If you want to, so I started investing in what I knew was a gift. I felt was a gift. I wasn't sure it was a gift until like everything that's happening now. But it literally went from a dream to investing in what I felt strongly that I was supposed to do. And it became more than I could have imagined.
That's amazing. I mean, how I won't even use the word lucky. You, how blessed to put your first book out there, and when it's a God dream, as a Kanye West song raps about. I mean, it just comes together. Let's get inside your mind a little bit about when you started writing. So the moment when you had the dream, the first vision, I guess you'd say, about it, up until when you were finished, like you put that final dot at the end. How long was that process, and how did you mentally prepare for that journey?
Um, I knew that what I did was I set milestones for myself, so I knew that I needed to get it done. So I knew I wanted to get a MFA. I knew that I wanted to take classes to get better. I knew I needed an editor to look at my work and tell me to be honest with me. Um, and I knew that I needed to get publications. So I say that I know these things now because one of my mentors told me early on, you need to treat this like a business. Um, and I didn't know that writing was really a business. I knew it was an art. I knew it was something I wanted to do, but it is a business. So, and a lot of writers, and where a lot of people get it wrong, even as I meet them today, is they treat writing as I've written a book, now look at it, read it, publish it. But it doesn't really work like that. It would be the equivalent of me going to Google and telling them, you know, hire me. No, I don't have a resume, but you need to hire me because I can do it. I believe that I can do it. You need to believe that I could do it. So here,
Yeah.
but you actually have to build a resume. And one of those things is I have a degree in writing. So that was the MFA for me. And also if you want to teach ever, you know, you don't need an MFA to publish a book, but that was the route that I was going. And I'll talk about different roads to publishing a little bit later. But I knew I needed an MFA. I needed a degree, like a BA or anything else. And I knew I needed somebody to say that my work was good enough. And for writing, it's getting it published to say, you know, this journal published my writing, or this journal published. So it's actually publications, not even speaking engagements, unless that's the type of book you have. But for a writer, you need to have other people say that you're good, you've done the job well, and that's what a bio is. Your bio becomes your resume as a writer. So I started working on that, and I knew some things had to happen. Um, so that was sort of my journey. It was really just goals. You know, it wasn't. I didn't expect. You can't anticipate. Some people do, like they're born saying, "I want to be a writer one day," but it wasn't my life. That wasn't my journey. I didn't wake up knowing, or all my life want to be a writer. I was a lawyer. You know, I knew I wanted to help people, make a difference in the world, and that's always been my impetus. So, and then when writing, and I guess it's the same in writing because I think I can help people. I want to help people to forgive. I want to help people to find hope and make sense of the past. So, yeah.
No, that's amazing. And, you know, I know sometimes to your, well, a couple of points, gems that you dropped is one thing at the memo is a consistent theme is investing in yourself. And to your point of you knew if I'm going to be really good at this, I have to invest and I need to learn, you know, what it is to be a writer and what, and get your MFA. And so, you know, kudos to you for doing that because I'm sure that sometimes some of us just want the instant gratification and the instant fame that goes along, you know, that could go along with that. So I think that's awesome. And how long did it take you to write Grace?
So it took 7 years to write it. They say that in novels are different than, say, nonfiction or something else, but it took me 7 years, and I think I've read somewhere that it takes a writer to write their first novel 5 to 10 years is the first book. And it seems like a long time, but you're doing other stuff in the meantime, you know, and also you're building community. So that was, So it didn't feel like seven. It did feel like 7 years, but it was like 3 years to get the first draft, and then all the other years you're in school or whatever. But not, you don't have to get an MFA to publish a book. But what I did is I looked at the bios of writers that I aspired to be like, and I said, okay, they have an MFA. Okay, they were published here. They were published here, and it made sense for the path that I was going. But my career started with Penn Center USA as an Emerging Voices Fellow, and it was specifically for people who had chosen not to get an MFA. Because there's a lot of reasons not to get one. You can't afford to go, time consuming, you have another career. But so there's other paths to publications.
No, that's good. And I'm sure people will have some questions about that later. But just to the community, if you have questions, don't forget to put them in the questions box, and we will get to them. So 7 years, that's amazing. And you were working full time, right? And you have a family and all these things. So and you still finished. I guess sometimes you can try. You did it all. I don't even know how you were able to do that. So, and put out such a great book. Let's get into Grace. For those who may not have read your book yet, without giving away too many spoilers, what would you tell them the book is about in your words?
It's about outcast women on the eve of the Civil War. So it's from the eve of the Civil War through for about a few years after the end of the Civil War. But it's about women. It's about motherhood. It's about building relationships, strong relationships with other women, and what we would risk for our sisters, and also what makes us angry, what makes us jealous, what makes us make the wrong choices, and and love. And I wanted to show different types of love. Yeah, so I would say that's what it's about. Love.
Okay. I love it. I know we have a lot of fans of yours, so a lot of people have read it and are putting in the chat box, yes, yes, yes. When I was reading the book, I'll have to admit it was hard for me to stay without the Kleenex. I would get so emotional while reading it, but in a lot of like good ways. But then I felt like I was on the plantation. I felt like I was in Alabama, that I was, running through the woods at these different times, or I was in certain homes. And you did such a great way of storytelling that I always say when I watch the TV show This Is Us, like every episode I'm crying, and through the book I'd be on the train, on the subway in New York, and tears would just be as I was reading the book, and it just did something to me. And you have a lot of complex women in the book, and like you said, some would deem them as outcasts, and as women of color, sometimes we're deemed as outcast. Maybe you could tell us some of the dynamic qualities of a couple of the women from the book. So a couple of my favorites, Hazel, Naomi, Josie. What would you say are their dynamic qualities that make them dynamic women, but not so much complicated, but dynamic?
I think that anytime one of my favorite poets, and he was a mentor early before he even knew he was. His name was Romus Simpson, just this incredible poet, and I wish he had a book out. But he used to say, he wrote a line in a poem that I'll never forget. He said, sometimes when we find these good things, especially as Black people, and for me as a Black woman, it's like finding sweet things in piles of shit. And I think about that is when we can, and we do that. We have to do that as women, as Black people, and we do it every time. We show up and we make something so beautiful. And Hazel, even though she's a slave and she's coming up against what's about to happen to her, or what's being threatened, and she risks her life because her sweet thing is her sister, and this love that she has for her sister, and just being sort of apologetic for her mother who, is broken. So I wanted to show just a pure love, how we can even find this purity of love, even in all this mess. How is that possible? And growing up, we used to care for foster children. And I remember, you know, like when they were in transition to another home, and my husband and I had, you know, babies who were on, you know, born addicted. But in that time, you would watch them, even with all the abuses that you read in the report and they tell you about, and they still laugh and they still find joy in these moments, you know. And to me, it's just so incredible. And they love, you know, and we love still, no matter what happens. How do we do that? So that was Hazel for me. I think that's dynamic, is being able to love despite what's happening to you. Um, for Josie, I think what made her is she was like that child who's growing up in all this mess and still finding herself, still being able to be happy and have joy. And when I read stories about, often about slaves, you know, we leave out the parts. We talk about the brutal parts. There's brutal parts in this book that I didn't want to ignore, but I wanted them to be able to fall in love, to dream. Like every child is born dreaming. They're no different than we are today. Like when I grow up, I'm gonna be this. They didn't say I'm gonna still be a slave. You know what I mean? Like they fell in love. They did stuff. They had hopes and dreams like every child. And I wanted to show that for her. I wanted to be just so confusing. Like, why would this child feel like that? But we did. That's how we survived. We're the survivors. Um, so I wanted her to show that.
Well, you did a great job of showing that, and I love that it's rooted in love, right? I think sometimes when we talk about slavery or that time period, you would think that nobody was loving, right? No, everything was a hardship, but they had to find love to keep going each and every day in some way, shape, or form. You mentioned that some of the women, you know, went through some brutality on the plantation. Right now in the media, we're seeing a lot of women coming forward about sexual assault and rape. Why was it so important to talk about these stories in your book? And very, I wouldn't say, yeah, and tell those stories. Sometimes I think we forget that women in that time period, Black women, every single day that was occurring. And yeah, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know, as I do, most of my work is criminal defense work now, and I work with nonprofits like megachurches or, you know, but I work also with nonprofits, but I do criminal law and I do what they call post-conviction work. So after somebody's already committed the crime, then I go and I help them seal records or erase, you know, their past, or get pardons from the governor. And I get excited about that, but sometimes it's really hard. Like when I have cases that involve rapists, especially, or child molesters. And I've represented child molesters. I can't lie and say that I haven't. But at first it was something like, oh, they made a mistake. Oh, they, you know, there was always so many reasons. But there was a case that made me never want to practice ever again. But one of the cases that was given to me after that was a case of involving a rape. And it was so horrific. So actually the rape that I write about in Grace was not from the 1800s. It was from 2016 or 2015, because it was because I had to rewrite it in 2015, and my editor says, "Oh, you have to take out some of this. You know, it can't be that violent," because we throw around words like rape, you know, like we know it. Oh, yeah, I was raped. Yeah, no. But no, let me show you what that looks like. The same with slavery. You know, you think you know about slavery. Let me show you what that looks like. Let's go for a walk really quick. So that particular rape was from a real life case from 2015. And I wanted to show that this is what was happening to women. Um, and as far as everything that's happening with Harvey Weinstein and this Me Too, you know, I think I'm glad that women are coming out and feeling supported, you know, that they can make that particular comment. Um, yeah, so rape is just part of being a woman, unfortunately. And I'm not saying that's not approving. That's saying that this is a reality that we need to face, and I'm glad that we're finally facing it today and dealing with it
Yeah.
harshly so that we can fix our society, hopefully.
Yeah, that's true. I'm hoping that that is true, and I know talking with a lot of men, they're like, I can't believe this is going on, and I'm like, as women, this is what we deal with every single day. There's not a time I don't get off the train and I'm like looking behind me, walking quickly at night. Or,
Right? This is reality. It's like, and it's not, and we're laughing, but we're laughing because it's so doggone sad.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
think that it doesn't happen or it hasn't happened. And I've written about, you know, I've had essays out about, my high school teacher. There's essays out there. And when this thing with Harvey came out, it wasn't like something I wanted to revisit. Everybody deals with it differently. I was like,
Mhm.
Harvey Weinstein is not my writing prompt, but I've talked about this before, and I'm glad women feel empowered to do it now.
Yeah, so thank you for shedding a light on that because I think we think about slavery and there were so many layers to what was going on the plantation and rape culture was alive and well on those and because maybe they're black women we don't revisit those instances and so I think that was important. As I read it I just kept hearing like the hashtag in my head, the Me Too, all of like these probably ancestors that were going through this
Yeah.
different stuff. So thank you for having courage to write about that and share. Um, and for those who haven't read the book, please, please, please go out and get it and get it for Christmas is coming up. So bless everybody and your family with the book. So make sure we support. But I know people have a lot of questions about the publishing industry, and I want everyone to go and read the book, so we won't dig too much deeper in that at the moment. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on self-publishing versus the traditional publishing route. I know a lot of people are doing, ebooks on Amazon and these different ways. Do you have thoughts on what's the best way to go or the pros and cons to either?
Right. So when I talk about self-publishing versus traditional publishing, we're really talking about what is it that you want. So you have to decide what it is that you want. Do you want just to publish a book for people to, your friends and family to read it? Do you want to have awards for your book? Do you want reviews of your book? Because if you self-publish a book, you're not being, generally speaking, you are not being reviewed by the publishing places that get your book out there, the New York Times or whatever, even though it's hard to get in there anyway, but I'm just saying you're not being reviewed. You're not up for awards unless they deal with self-publishing specifically. Your distribution is different. So for me, I wanted to write a book that I wanted to get as far as possible. Like I wanted people to read it in Italy. I wanted to have it in a bookstore, whether I was sitting there with my books or not. And before I published this book, I had a children's book out. It was like a picture book. But what you find out, as well as anybody else who self-published a book, is you have all these books in your garage that don't get, because there's a lot that goes with publishing traditionally, but it doesn't mean not to self-publish. Self-publish, you don't need a gatekeeper anymore. You can put out there whatever you want and, whatever quality you want, and it can do fine, and you can work that. Getting a traditional publishing means that you're getting a team of people who are doing that for you, who are going, you have, your a big publishing arm that's distributing your book at the bookstores, is recommending your books, is getting them places, getting them overseas and things like that. So it's just a different ball game. It's like selling, like you can make, say you're selling popcorn. I don't know, you're selling popcorn. It's different if you're selling it from your house than it being in Costco. There's a whole chain, they're getting it around, so it's around the country. So it depends on what you want, really. But they're both, if your goal is to get your work out there no matter what, you don't care if anybody likes it, self-publish. Or even if you have a good product and nobody wants it, self-publish. Because nobody can tell you what not to do. It's just what your end goal is as a business person. So I encourage everybody to think from a business perspective. If you were starting a business and say it wasn't your book, say it was a product you liked, say you created a new invention and it's, I don't know, whatever this invention would be, how would you want it to be distributed? Is it you? Are you the salesperson? Or are you trying to get other people to sell your book? So traditional publishing is a way for other people to sell your product around the country and around the world. Self-publishing, it's you. It's you, and it's you and your husband or your spouse or your mom or whoever is paying for the books to be printed, for you to travel wherever you're going, and so on. So it's just a different game.
No, that's great advice. With that said, I know that there's a lot of women who are on the line and watching that have books inside of them. And what advice would you have for them just to get started and stop thinking about that book year after year and, and start writing it?
It's just to write. If all you can write is a sentence, is a paragraph, just 2 lines, do it today. Whatever that thought is, put it in the notes section of your phone while you're on the subway. Or while you're, instead of texting, just be like, ooh, that's a good thought. Just put it in your phone and start emailing them to yourself. And when you start seeing those things piling up, and then, leave it for later. But just do something every day. Take a step, because it's a journey. The writing thing mine was 7 years long. But I'm telling you, you have to take steps. And each step is a line that you've written, is a class that you've taken about writing, is an investment in yourself and your business, because you have till you die to write the book. So just walk towards it. Don't feel like you have to be great at it. Don't feel like you have to wait till you can call yourself a writer, because you may never call yourself a writer. It just may not happen. So just don't make excuses for yourself, because, and I've said this before, we were at the one conference in New York together. As if nobody writes the story that you've been given, you will die with your story. Nobody else can write it for you. So you have to write your story. You have to write it. You have to get it out, even if it's crap, because guess what? Your first draft is going to be crap. Your second draft is going to be crap. And people are going to be telling you things about your book. You're not even going to understand it. It doesn't matter. Keep writing, because you have to get it out. You owe it to, for me, I felt like God gave it to me. For whoever is giving it to you, your ancestors, whatever, you need to walk it out.
That's excellent advice. I know the conference, the Well-Read Women's Conference in Brooklyn, I stalked Natashia and said, I have to be friends with you. I have to be my mentor, please. And she graciously didn't tell me to go sit down somewhere. So no, it's been great. I know there's some weird thing about the publishing world. Everybody feels like it's one of those, I'm not sure what happens next, and I know that I feel that way often at times. What would you say you learned most about yourself through the whole publishing process, from agent to proposal, etc.? Give us some insight into what that is like. Once you are finished, then the what?
Right. Well, I can tell you what surprised me about myself. What surprised me is after my book came out and it was doing well, it just you become this sort of monster. Not monster, it's but you're always checking, where's your ratings? What is this? What is that? Are people reading? Oh, they hate it, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that. I didn't like who I was becoming, because I always felt like I was generous. I run a reading series, I do stuff. But I wanted to hoard information. And as women, especially Black women, we owe it to other women to share knowledge. It doesn't mean that somebody's going to get ahead of us or whatever. We have to share. That's how we get better. We all come up together. Everything that's happening with Jesmyn Ward just won the National Book Award. But all of us are we have to keep going together, especially women. And that's why I think Me Too is so powerful. There is no lone wolf in all this. But it just sort of made me crazy, and I didn't like the way that I was. But what I learned about publishing also is that that you're a partner in your book's life. You give birth to it, but it's not just gone. You're running with it for the rest of your life, I guess. For Grace, most books, there's seasons for books. There's winter, there's summer, winter, spring, summer, fall books. Fall is around your Christmas books. I didn't know there were seasons for books, and it makes a difference when your book comes out, when in the year. your chances for like awards and things like that, if that's what you want. I keep saying awards because we're in awards season, or the announcement of awards. Um, but it really, and if for me, I knew I wanted, it was good that my book came out in the summer because I knew I was a teacher at the time, so I could travel with my book and invest in it. So I think that was what surprised me, is how much of a partner I am in it. And you're often alone on the road, and nobody's paying you to go to their bookstore. Nobody's paying you. That was the other surprise. Nobody's paying you to go any of the places that you go. That's from you. And so, and I got a sort of sense of that before my book came out. So I was like, okay, with my tax return, I'm not getting a car, I'm not getting this or that. I want to invest this when my book comes out. So I knew how much money I had to spend to go to the places I needed to go. And as a business, and you know this, Minda, that you have to go, you have to show up. You know, you can't, in any business, you got to go to the conferences, you got to go to stuff, and it's an investment of your own time, your own money, and the publishers are not paying for you to go those places to invest in your book and yourself.
That's true. Yeah, even as a business owner, I have to invest in myself all the time, and our company, to get better and hone in on our skills. And sometimes, you know, it's money that you don't have, or but you're like, it's a good investment because you know you'll see it later. So that's a very good point. I know that one more question, and then we'll jump into some of the questions that people have, because I know they want to get them all in. I see them coming through. So let's more about you. What do you like to do when you're not writing and not traveling and winning awards? You know?
I love my law practice. I believe that people deserve second chances, and I love it fulfills me. I was in Armenia recently too, you know, helping with the reconciliation effort between Turkish people and Armenian people. If you know anything about Armenian history, you know there was a genocide by the Turkish, and they lost a lot of people. So they don't talk. So to go there and do writing programs there and help, you know, with the reconciliation efforts there, helps me to see our problems in America differently. You know, business people don't see different things; they see the same things differently. And I think as Black women, we need to try to do things, or as women, we need to try to do things to push ourselves to see things differently, to get out of our comfort zones in our communities, even if that's to drive to the next community over. Like, we can't afford to be safe, unfortunately, or secure in our sameness. We have to push ourselves, and if it even means getting off on the next subway stop, and you know, that's what it is. So, but I enjoy being with my family. I enjoy going to church. I enjoy doing homeschool with my daughter because I'm learning things that I've never thought I'd learn. And I never thought I would do homeschool. I thought they were weirdos, but I was like, at the time, you know, I did, you know, but at the time, it didn't make sense to me that I was winning awards for being a teacher in the college system, and then my daughter was suffering in school, and I'm like, oh, here's my award for being professor, you know, professor, and she's like not doing her 9 timetables, or so I couldn't do that. So I enjoy my family. I enjoy church. I enjoy Bible study. I enjoy just sitting in my pajamas and eating bonbons and drinking coffee too late and then staying up all night.
The good life. The good life. No, you know, homeschool. I'm one of 3 kids, and I'm the oldest, and I have 2 brothers. And my youngest brother, he was homeschooled, and we always used to joke around with him, you're a homeschooler, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he used to hate it. And even now, like, when I'm joking around with him, I'll be like, Michael, you don't know that because you're a homeschooler, you know. But, yeah, but, you know, he came out perfectly fine. He played college sports afterwards, you know, so I think the old days of what homeschoolers were like when I went to school, I think a lot of them probably some were weird, I know for a fact. But then I know the homeschooling has changed.
I know, right?
So I'm sure your daughter is one of the gems.
Yeah,
But
I'm like, are we okay? Are we okay? Is this okay? Okay, okay.
yeah.
Just tell me if this is bad. This is bad. Okay. I'm like the most insecure homeschool mom teacher. I'm like not sure at all. I'm like day by day.
Well, kudos to you. Let's jump into some of the questions that we have coming in. Let's see. Someone said, at a very basic level, how do you translate the story in your head and put it into words on a page?
Ooh. So for me, I start with voice. You know, there's a lot of ways into a story. Voice meaning like, how am I going to tell this story? Is it first person? Is it third person? Am I the character? Am I saying I'm going to go to the store? Or am I saying Karen went to the store and she smelled the, whatever she smelled? Or like, how do you? But for me with Grace, I heard her voice. Like I heard her running. I knew what she was thinking. So I knew that I had to tell a story through the voice of this particular character. And I just wrote it down. I literally wrote down what I saw or what I felt. But the rest of the story didn't come like that. Like I had to work at it, everything down to dialect. People will often ask me, "Oh, who speaks like that in your family?" I'm like, no one. I like creating a language, even in dialect, which is for me was a mix of the past and the present, because I wanted to create something that we could read today. I don't think I would want to read something that was so heavily, or at least for this story, I didn't want to read something that was so heavily weighted in dialect that anybody couldn't read it. But really, I just write down what I see, what I feel, what I hear. And the most neglected, I think, of all the senses is smell, is emotions that aren't cliche, like when people say, "Oh, I had, my stomach fluttered," or "I had butterflies," or crashing waves, or things like that. So really just writing, finding a way into your story that's unique to you, because only you can tell the story the way you would tell it. So even if we were to sit down right now, you and I, it would be, you would tell a story, the same story one way, and I would tell it different. And one of the examples that I give is if there's, especially as I work with clients and witnesses, asking them to tell me what happened, you could have three people in the same room witnessing the same event, and each of them will tell the story differently. So I tell writers, tell me why you are in that room. You can't tell me what the other two people will, it's going to be different. So when you write on the very basic level, tell me why you are in that room telling this story this time. Why is Natasha not telling it? Why is it Minda not telling it? Why is it you?
Yeah, wow, that's great. If you have questions, don't forget to put them in the questions box so that we get to them. I know I'm just like caught up in that last answer. That's really good. We have another one here. Do you have any advice on getting your foot in the door? Should I write for blogs, publications? How can I get noticed?
Blogs are good. Blogs are so powerful right now. The things that you write. It and also depends what type of, I don't know what type of story that person writes. Are they writing nonfiction?
They didn't say. If you get a chance, you can type that answer into the chat box if you can.
Yeah, it's very specific. And just know that your stories, your essays, your personal essays that you write, people will be quoting them to you for the rest of your life. So, sometimes you got to take one for the team and you're helping people. But however you can be published, be published. But there are, if you go the literary journal route, there are journals that are more prestigious than other ones. There is an order of things. Like I said, it's the difference between working at Google versus working at your local PC repair place. It's like there's different levels. To be noticed, obviously, if you were in the New Yorker or something like that, or in different things, look at writers who you admire or you think are doing pretty well. See who's in their bio, in their long bio, and see where they've been published. and then go to those places and then and then see if you have something that fits those requirements. That's one way to start. Um, and just write and just write. But just seriously, I'm serious about the bios. Really do that, and then go from there.
Our next question is about, they said you chose the the Civil War time period. Why did you choose that period to tell the story?
I felt like it chose me in many ways. But there are things that I thought were resolved, things that I thought I knew about the Civil War. For instance, I didn't know that the Emancipation Proclamation was in the middle of the Civil War. Like slaves were freed literally 2 years into the 4-year war, and they were expected to go somewhere. And the only reason I found that out was actually after I had finished writing Grace. And one of the editors who responded and was thinking about purchasing Grace, which didn't, and thank God, in the end, because she told me, she said, I think slaves would have been happy on the day of the Emancipation Proclamation, and I think that this book should revolve around the Emancipation Proclamation. And I was like, okay, okay, I think I could do that. Okay, well, I could change it. And I was making all these things, and it just was wrong. It felt wrong. I knew it was wrong for the book, but I didn't know why. And I wanted to be able to answer that question, so I drew out a timeline. I was like, why is this bothering me so much? Drew out a timeline, and that's when I discovered, oh my gosh, my Valley Girl knees is coming out. I'm sorry. I'm so Valley Girl. I'm black and I'm Valley. The diversity of black women, yes. I was like mapping out, the war, and I was like, they were released in the middle of the Civil War. Why would they be happy? We wanted to be this freedom dance, this freedom song. It wasn't like that. It didn't go down like that in history. And I'm glad that it didn't turn out, I didn't go with that editor, but I waited for Counterpoint Press to an editor who actually understood my work and what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's great. And a lot of them didn't know they were free for a long time either. So,
yeah. When I teach my law school class, in California, for instance, and I know this is kind of a tangent, but marijuana is legal in California, and people are still like, can I smoke this? Can I not smoke this? Can I smoke? Can I no? It's like, and we're in this age of super technology where we know everything instantly. And imagine how much harder it was for slaves to know that they were free, that generation after 400 years of this, they could just walk away from, and no, that wasn't going to happen, and they didn't, because they were smart. And they weren't trusting what people were saying, that the law had changed and they were free.
Yeah, I know. A little studying a little history will go a long way. It does. Another question for you is, how do you maintain work, all practice, writing, teaching, homeschooling, life, and church balance, and still keep smiling? Yeah.
I try not to think about it. Like, other people think about it for me, and I say that because if you had to walk 100 miles and you kept thinking 100 miles, how far is this? It's 99. All you could do is look at what's in front of you right now, or else you'll never be present in a moment, ever. You always be looking at the next thing. You'll be one place looking at the next step. You have to exist in that space, because once it's gone, you'll never see it again. I think about, like, how Facebook gives you memories. There are things on this tour, places I've been, that I don't even remember being. Like, what did I eat? What did I, and I see Facebook is telling me I was there, and I regret those moments. So just try not to, for me, I try not to think about it. I just make my commitments. I plan only my rest periods. Like, when do I get to do nothing? And every other time is work. Like, I'm doing something towards one of those goals. God first, family, and then, friends, and writing, and my work as an attorney. And I know what time those things happen. So I just try to plan only my breaks. So if I know I have an hour break, I break hard. Like, I don't pick up the phone, or I'm not talking to anyone. So just structure for me, I structure my day differently. So I plan only my work. And my husband is awesome. Wait, let me just say, my husband is the bomb. If you're an artist, any artist out there, if I'm sorry, being with another artist makes it really hard. But you have somebody has to understand. The partner that you're with is somebody who has to be supportive and understanding of what it is you're doing together. A lot of people will say, "Oh, this is my career. This is," another partner will say, "Well, this is my career." No, you guys have to share a common vision and a common goal, and believe that the other is supposed to do that thing. So my husband is so super supportive, and I don't mean that in like a kissy PDA kind of way. I just know that I couldn't do it unless he were there with my children. I was in Armenia for 10 days, and then there he is. Not
Yeah,
that.
no, that's amazing.
Yeah, but you got to have that.
Yes, definitely. Another question for you is, who are your favorite authors?
Oh, Toni Morrison. I always say Toni Morrison. Caitlin Greenwich, who is out right now. Chiwan Choi, who is a poet. I have so many, and it really depends on, how I'm feeling that day. Like if I just want to just go like, okay, I need the power to tell somebody to F off. It's like Roxane Gay. If I want to
Yeah, Roxanne will tell you in 2 seconds.
I mean? Yeah, just need that. Like you need your girls, even though you don't talk to them or anything. You just like, just tell me, just encourage me. Or sometimes you just need to, you know, like Caitlin. Caitlin, every time I read her, I feel like I'm talking to a friend. I like Sapphire, Push. Um, to go way back, I love Brewster's Place. That was Naylor, Gloria Naylor. I loved her book. So, and I can go on, but I'll forget people. But yeah, I don't mean it. It's just, and I read the Bible every day, and that's just so I know that people lived. And that said, I also read like very like ancient scripts, like from the Egyptians, when they're talking about, these emperors coming to power and, killing people or being bullies. And you're thinking, we've done this before. Humanity has done this before.
Yes, definitely. It has. We're going through our own little stint right now, right?
Right? Right?
Someone else asked, these are great questions, everyone. I know some people are asking some of the same ones. How do you deal with fame, being recognized, people wanting to know all of your business? That's a question.
I'm not even, being writer famous is not the same as being like actor famous, or people don't recognize. I can still walk, it doesn't feel like fame. And then when people recognize me, I'm like, I'm just happy that they recognize me. Let me be honest. I'm like, you know me? Oh, hi. I'm like, so I don't know. I don't really see it like that. I don't see that. I just feel like I'm a mom. I'm the same person. Like nothing has changed in my life significantly. I still got to write the next book. I still feel like I can't write the next book. I don't have all those insecurities come back. So I don't know. I don't really see it like that. And I never wrote because I wanted to be famous. I wrote because I wanted to tell a story that I felt like I had to tell.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really good. Let's see. We had another one here. Who is your favorite character in the book?
Cynthia. She was based on a real person that I knew and who terrified me. She was a former prostitute who moved around the corner from me. She married her John, her customer, and moved around the corner from me. And she was wild and she was crass. And she loved my mom and would help her when my mom became a single mom, and she would paint and I never had a conversation with her. I was so terrified of her. She was the first person to bring like alcohol in the house, and she would curse. And when she died, I wanted to honor her. And so I created the character of Cynthia to be funny and scary and sort of, but loving, like, because we're all so different, you know, who we are as women, we're different and we're all valuable, and we don't all have to look a certain way or behave a certain way or have the same jobs, or, you know, we could be different and still be valued and loved. So I wanted to love her.
That's great. You know, when I was reading the book and first introduced to Cynthia, it made me think of this woman that I used to work with when I was in high school. I used to work at this telemarketing job trying to get people to switch over their long distance provider. So I'm really dating myself. It was like MCI or something like that. And I used to work with this this really, really crass white woman named Tammy, and I haven't seen her in years, but she used to do she was like my guiltiest pleasure, because she like talked crazy, she acted crazy, she was like just this older woman that I'm just like, how are you getting through the world being so crazy and wild and boisterous? And nobody messed with her, and I loved everything about it, because I was the complete opposite of her, but I was like, and we got along so well, and I saw, when I envisioned Cynthia's face, I thought of Tammy. So that's a great.
Here's to the Tammy of the world.
Yes, yes. Cheers. I know we have time for one more, maybe two. Let's see. We have a few questions about writing retreats. Do you think those are helpful?
Yes, especially if you have family, and especially if you have somebody to care, if you have children, if you have somebody to take care of your children. If you don't have children, go on writing retreats just to get away from your sane environment. And it doesn't mean that you have to, because some writing retreats, you know, it's a privilege to go to a writing retreat, to be able to pay that per day price. If you can get a scholarship, I went to Virginia Center for Creative Writing. I went to Belgium. They have a scholarship program, but you still got to get those places. To get to Virginia from California and taking time off, or to get to Belgium or Yale or some of the other ones that I went to. There's a great one that I just came from, Mesa Refuge, beautiful in Northern California. But all these places cost something, but they're worth it because there's a lot of great energy there. But if you can't afford to go to a residency, you create your own residency. That's what I had to do. Like I went to, I would like plan to go by the beach to a cheap little hotel that's safe because I'm by myself as a woman. And you just, you know, pay for 3 days, and then you write, and you just stay up, you just keep writing. You write the hell out of those 3 days, and then you go home. You create your own writing retreat. You don't need somebody to tell you this is retreat. You just go and create it. So I used to go to this little place in Santa Barbara, great little, right on the beach. It was really cheap, like $100 a night. And that's what I would do with my tax return money. Me and my tax return money. But you take that 300, whatever you get, you know, and write.
Ladies, tax return money. Don't buy the shoes. Invest in yourself in the other way. I guess we do have time for one more. Let's see. This is a good one. Someone asked, as women of color, sometimes we don't see a lot of us shining in the media. It's kind of a long one, so let me. How do you not become jealous of other Black women that are shining while waiting for your time? I think that's what.
Is you have to change what I teach. So this is, I don't know how to say it without, because I teach about this also in my Bible study class when I'm talking about we need to change our heart towards each other. You have to make a decision not to be jealous. Because if you think about even children, when one gets something and another gets something, our instinct is to be jealous. That's our instinct. That's who we are. It doesn't matter how good you think you are or whatever. You have to choose to say, you know what, she did it. Congratulations. You need to clap it out. You need to speak it out. And you need to train yourself not to give into that instinct that makes you want to just be jealous of them. Because you have to train yourself not to do that. There's times when I've been jealous of things. Heck yeah, you're going to be jealous. You're going to wish you had this. Why didn't I? It's just going to happen. It's just human nature. But we can't afford to do that. As women, as Black women, we have to support each other because it's the only way to get to the next step. So by congratulating them, being excited for them intentionally, I'm saying intentionally decide I'm going to be happy, genuinely happy. You're training yourself to do that because it's the only way. There's no other option. Jealousy is not an option.
No, that's a word for all of us. That it can creep in.
And
even
you
when
have
you
that
don't
moment,
want to.
just be like, okay, snap out of it, girl, snap out of it.
Definitely. I lied. One last question. A couple people want to know where you got the dope painting behind you.
Thank you. I'm in her homeschool class right now. And so that's Martin. I got Martin. I got Jimmy. I got like all this. I think where did I get that? Fab.com. And they have a lot of great ones.
I know, I'm writing that down too. That's not your typical traditional homeschool room.
I should show you. Look. Wait, we're doing it
now. Okay.
Right there. And then
I see James.
We call him Jimmy. He's one of our students. And then there's Jimi Hendrix right there. Here's in the pot. Yeah. So I try to keep it real up in here.
I like it. It's a breeding ground for creativity. I love it. I love it. Well, I could talk to you all night, and I know that the people on the phone, we haven't forgot about you guys, and the people watching, it's been just such a pleasure. And I know that this is only the beginning of beautiful, beautiful things for you, and the best is still yet to come. Do you have any final words?
Yeah, I just want to say to just all the women, just keep writing, support each other, even when it hurts to do it. And as you create, things are going to get in the way of it because there's just a kickback. When you're moving towards a goal, everything will get in the way. I remember right when I was about to deliver my book, somebody I hadn't seen in 30 years showed up, drive to my house, and was like, hey, I was like, no. I was like, I'm on my way somewhere. I was like, I'm not right now. So just keep going. Don't stop. Don't quit. If you don't do it, nobody's going to do it, and it's worth it. You're worth it.
On that note, that's a mic drop right there. You're worth it. And that's it. Ladies, thank you so much for taking time out with us tonight to learn. Again, read, tell your friends about Grace. It's once you start reading and for those who already know, it's hard to put it down. So do that. The holidays are coming up, so you need a good reading list. That's like mandatory. So thank you, Natashia. So much fun. All right, you guys have a great rest of your week and have a good night.